Alrighty then, it seems that we are recording. Let me get the mic real close. Let me introduce myself to y'all. How y'all doing? My name is Luis. Hopefully, I have an amazing day today. Basically, if you haven't been living under a rock, you should know about now. Right about now, right? It's actually one of the hashtags. I believe the Jeffrey Dahmer little documentary, whatever it is. I'm not even sure what it is because I haven't watched it. I know, don't crucify me. Don't come at me. Don't leave me hate in the comment section. But yes, I have to come clean. I have not watched it yet. This video got dropped like an hour ago, but y'all already know Jeffrey Dahmer. All right, I'm sure y'all do, or at least y'all have heard of him because of just how popular this has become. This has become probably, I think, the second most watched English show, whatever, on Netflix already. Basically, all my friends that I know of, they say that they're watching it, or they plan on watching it, or they have watched it. So it's a big deal. I think it's kind of like weird. When you deep it a little bit, it's like this guy killed 17 guys, 17 people. Their families are still alive. Imagine having that happen to you. This guy just cannibalizes whatever, all the shit that he does to one of your family members, and then they make a documentary. Like, this guy just goes viral. This is the second most viewed Netflix thing ever, and the name of the thing is the name of the person that killed one of your family. Like, that would be just mad, but that's the way the world is. Let's get straight into it, man. No more needs to be said. I'm not trying to take up too much of y'all time. Let's go. From about 15 years old and on, a great deal of my thoughts are basically unshareable, so I close myself off and just put on a mask of normalcy.
Those words were spoken by Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer, a sex offender, necrophiliac, and cannibal who brutally murdered 17 Milwaukee young men throughout the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. Dahmer's story makes a very chilling example of a psychopath whose appearance of normalcy played a huge part in his ability to get away with so many atrocities. Yet it is also this facade that causes us to wonder how much a person who seems perfectly normal on the outside could commit such outrageous acts of violence.
Because I think, is that like a thing that gets embedded into us when we're children? When all of the monsters and evil people and the dangerous people in the cartoons and in all the shows and in all the movies, they always seemed scary. They always were obviously the bad guy. They had glowing red eyes. They were huge. They had a mask on that was creepy. They had something that they couldn't do. They couldn't talk. They couldn't do a lot of things. And I think that sets people up to have this idea that people who are really strange and weird and fucked up are people that don't look like normal everyday people. But in reality, they most definitely do. And we see this with Jeffrey Dahmer. And that's kind of crazy. It's never the ones that you expect. Never.
We want to look into the eyes of these individuals to get a glimpse of why they are the way they are.
I mean,
we want to understand the psychology of a serial killer.
Empathy? That's
probably
one of the only
we
things
like to think we have psychopaths and serial killers figured out. And in some ways we have. In 1980, a Canadian forensic psychologist named Robert Hare created a master list of 22 traits you can use to diagnose psychopathy. A list that is still the most widely used by experts to this day.
The main one.
The list includes things like superficial charm, grandiosity, pathological lying and deception, impulsivity, proneness to boredom, showing no remorse, a lack of realistic long-term plans, leading a parasitic lifestyle, and being unable to accept responsibility. When most of us think of the term psychopath...
that's a lot of people. A lot of people fit into those things. They just don't... they wouldn't identify it. They wouldn't, agree to it. They wouldn't accept those things because we always repress those sides of us that we know society would deem as bad or unfavorable or ugly. We always repress those, but they're a part of our shadow anyways. Most of the people, almost most people, I feel, have a lot of those things just lingering and dormant in them,
These traits pretty much perfectly describe the image that comes to mind. A person who is full of themselves, unaware of the emotional reality of others, deceitful, manipulative, and self-centered. Where things get a little complicated is when you discover that there's still a distinct difference between being a psychopath and a serial killer, although the two distinctions often overlap. Unlike what a lot of us think, the fact that someone is a diagnosed psychopath doesn't automatically mean they have the capacity to kill, and vice versa. Just because someone is a serial killer doesn't automatically make them a psychopath. Dahmer is a perfect example of a person who is a serial killer, but not necessarily a clear-cut psychopath. A revised 40-point version of the hair psychopathy checklist is used to evaluate individuals. Those that meet 25 to 35 of the criteria on the list are considered to be psychopathic, while other notorious psychopaths like Richard Ramirez, Ted Bundy, and John Wayne Gacy all scored within the 25 to 35 range. Dahmer only matched 13 of the warning signs, and you can pick up on this just by watching some of the interviews he gave after he was caught.
And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
In them, Dahmer comes across as startlingly soft-spoken, self-reflective, modest, remorseful, and honest about what he did and why he thinks he may have done it. Other serial killers struggle to convey this level of apparent normalcy after their crimes were exposed. For years, Ted Bundy tried to lie and manipulate his way out of responsibility for his crimes. John Wayne Gacy admitted to his acts with absolutely no remorse, referring to his victims as pieces of his property. Richard Ramirez proclaimed proudly, "I love to kill people, I love watching them die." Both displayed signs of obvious narcissism and psychopathy, traits that could pretty easily single them out in a crowd and make them appear obviously different from you or I. This is what makes Dahmer different and perhaps even more terrifying than other serial killers. At the time that he was committing the murders, Dahmer was able to fly under the radar more easily than others since he didn't fit the image of the deranged, egotistical maniac that everyone was looking for.
Regular, everyday guy.
He spoke and looked just like you and I. He could have been your classmate, your close friend, your cousin, or even your brother.
It actually was. You guys seen that video that came out on TikTok? Somebody like shared their one of their school's yearbooks, and like literally it was Jeffrey Dahmer was in it. You'd see the comment section. Everybody was like, "Yeah, you act like the dude just like magically spawned here and traveled here from a different planet. Like if he didn't live a whole entire life up until the point that he committed these acts, like he was just a human being, just like you and me. He went to school, and they found him. They found him in a fucking school. But that must be tough, man. That school, as a school, Jesus."
And you would have never known. Jeffrey's own father, Lionel Dahmer, wrote an entire memoir about how shocking it was for him to wrestle the fact that his oldest son, who he remembers as being a sweet, playful, curious child, went on to inflict such horror on so many people. Whenever people hear of a story like Jeffrey Dahmer's, the knee-jerk reaction is to focus on the perpetrator's childhood, assuming that they must have been abused, neglected, or psychologically damaged in some way.
That's what I was gonna say.
This approach is understandable. People want events to follow a linear point A to point B cause and effect pattern. It makes evil easier to predict, identify, and prevent. Unfortunately, the motivations, desires, and urges of serial killers don't usually operate that way, making these questions about the person's childhood usually pretty unhelpful in explaining their behavior.
Is it really? I mean,
while Dahmer didn't have a picture-perfect upbringing, by no accounts was he physically abused or taken advantage of in any way that even came close to the horrors that he went on to inflict on his victims. During his sentencing, Dahmer went up on the stand and said this to the judge.
Did he say this himself, or are we just listening to the parents? Are we like listening to the parents? Like, I'm sure they must have asked him, right? Like, "Yo, how was your childhood?" And I'm guessing he must have himself said, "No, I wasn't like specifically like particularly abused. I wasn't like fucked up in my as a child. Maybe not from his parents." What is it, bro? Let's figure it out.
This has never been a case about trying to get free. I never wanted freedom. Frankly, I wanted death for myself. This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. I know how much harm I've caused. I tried to do the best I could to make amends after the arrest, but no matter what I did, I cannot undo the terrible harm I've caused. This quote encapsulates the questions we're all asking. What is this sickness that drives serial killers to do what they do? And how could someone who appears to be so stable commit such insidious violations of humanity? Experts have come to learn that the desire to inflict extreme harm on others is more often a mysterious dark urge that originates from deep within the individual, and not something external like we tend to think. Dahmer described this urge as a compulsion, which he says started to stir in him around the age of 9 or 10, when he became fascinated by the bodies of a lifeless crab he found on the beach. Over the next few years, Dahmer's compulsion grew, and he began to dissect other small animals, including dogs and cats, saying that he was captivated with the way that the insides of their bodies looked. In his early teens, these desires switched from animals to humans. Dahmer didn't hear voices in his head that told him what to do. He was not a person who was acting on impulse or for revenge. He went out on secret, premeditated missions, honing in on strangers with the singular intent of committing vicious atrocities on them. After his first murder in 1978, Dahmer claims that he tried to get his urges in check, and he did to an extent, going 6 years without blood on his hands. But he, as well as all others like him, could only keep the uncontrollable urge at bay for so long.
Urge to kill people.
One framework that psychologists use to categorize
how much of that is that's always been the question of like contemporary philosophy. Like that's been the question, right? How much is nature? How much is nurture? It seems where this seems to be going is it's sort of nature. What is this, just like a lapse of like something must have been fucked up when he was being born? Like is there just like some extra chemical? Is there like a lack of like what is going on there? You know, what is going on with the consciousness that like I mean, we all repress a lot of stuff, but like a real urge to kill people, is that really in all of us? I haven't read any literature that says killing people is necessarily something that's in us. I mean, I guess it could manifest in that way. I don't see how that's necessarily impossible. But it's like, it's also very unlikely considering how we're social animals. Like, we're supposed to, like, well, to kill people. What the fuck? How does that make any sense?
Categorized personality traits is called the 5-factor model.
Urge to kill.
It divides the human personality into 5 main pillars: extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, and openness to experience. The combination of these traits that is most commonly used to describe a psychopath is a person who is low in agreeableness and conscientiousness and high in neuroticism. This type of person has a low level of sensitivity towards the emotion of others, a low level of intelligence and ability to adhere to the rules, standards, and structures set by society, and a high potential to experience emotional instability or possess some kind of mood disturbance.
So that might be genetics.
It's been theorized that the most noteworthy trait difference between functioning psychopaths who are able to become relatively successful based on our society's normative standards of achievement and unsuccessful psychopaths who are unable to amount to much of any quantifiable success is conscientiousness. Possessing high levels of conscientiousness makes a person dutiful, organized, deliberate, and competent. For example, let's say there's a diagnosed psychopath named Jimmy. Jimmy has low levels of empathy towards others, a tendency towards lying and deception, and a grandiose sense of self. In almost all professional settings, these psychopathic characteristics would make Jimmy an unlikable and untrustworthy person in the eyes of his coworkers and employers, thus putting him at a disadvantage. However, let's say that Jimmy also has a high level of conscientiousness. This conscientiousness would help him to self-identify the potential pitfalls of his cold-heartedness, lying, and grandiosity, and likely give him the motivation to adjust or hide his other negative behaviors enough so that he could get ahead in the workplace. This measurement of conscientiousness can also be used to differentiate serial killers. Those who have higher levels of it are called organized killers. They tend to lead methodical lives, have skilled employment, be socially proficient, and have high levels of intelligence. Disorganized killers, on the other hand, possess low levels of conscientiousness. They're more likely to have lower levels of intelligence and are less concerned about leaving behind sloppier crime scenes. The difference between psychopaths and serial killers is that with psychopathy, conscientiousness can be a positive trait, which can help them gain control over their negative psychopathic qualities. But with serial killers, there are no positives. It makes them even deadlier as it only seems to pair their murderous internal urges with organized, competent, and deliberate plans of execution. This is what makes them better at finding strategic ways of getting away with their actions, at least for a while.
Oh my god.
As you would expect, Dahmer was one of these people. He committed heinous crimes.
The fact that Mother Nature creates this, like, how does that? Is there like a? I'm questioning if there was like a fuck up when this guy was being developed in the womb. Like, is there something like that? Because you know how DNA is pretty accurate, like 99%, but every now and then there's a fuck up that gets made, because nothing's perfect. So even Mother Nature in genetics, they tend to make a fucking, they tend to make a mistake. Could this be a mistake that he just didn't like develop? Well, do we know? Did he not have empathy? I'm guessing he didn't have empathy. I don't even think that's a question that needs to be asked. If he committed this shit, he did not have empathy. But how is it that he doesn't have empathy? Is it just a fault of his creation? Like, they forgot to add it in. He just didn't have it. It's not something that was like beaten out of him since he didn't have a rough childhood. Or like, is it the environment? Maybe he was bullied at school. Maybe it doesn't have to be his parents. But wouldn't he have said this? I'm pretty sure if he's saying this, it's because they must have asked him. And I'm hoping that they did. But then again, if you ask him, would he... Well, then that's just getting into something else. Because then you'd have to question if he would even tell you the truth. But I'm guessing he's being truthful. If he said, no, I wasn't beaten. I guess it is possible then. For just be like a glitch. A glitch of human nature. Just something that can actually manifest. Because we all have dark urges. Like I said, yeah. Not that much different from us. All you gotta do is just lack empathy and perhaps a whole lot of grandiosity, maybe. Amongst other things, but mainly empathy.
In his apartment and had bodies hidden throughout in various stages of decomposition. Yet anytime someone mentioned an odor or noticed anything that might seem out of the ordinary, he always had a meticulously crafted answer that made sense. He methodically targeted racial minorities and homosexuals because he knew, sadly enough, that law enforcement at the time was simply less interested in pursuing crimes against people of those identity categories. Humans like Dahmer force us to ask questions like, how can we identify killers who hide so skillfully behind these masks of normalcy? And I think this question is where so much of the interest...
Oh, those are real people, man. This world is fucking... Oh, it can be really fucking disturbing, man. Holy fuck. Real people! Real people were killed by this fucker.
Intrigue about both psychopaths and serial killers
Real
comes
like
from
me.
the idea that anyone around us right now could be outed as the next murderous maniac. As you're watching this video, you may be haunted by the possibility that one of your neighbors, close friends, or even family members could be one of these people, harboring hidden fantasies about hurting others. For all we know, you could even be a psychopath, whose desire to inflict harm on someone for your own pleasure is just being suppressed under a mask of normalcy. In the words of Ted Bundy, we are your sons, we are your husbands, we are everywhere.
Oh, please don't quote this motherfucker. He's not wrong, but like, come on, dog. Why you gotta end it with a quote from Ted Bundy? Oh my god. Top comments. I want to thank Aperture. Your timing could be perfect. Copy the math homework? Yeah, I'd probably copy his math homework. Can this bringing mechanism be changed back to normal? That's the question. Yeah, that's what I was saying a little bit. But anything can be seen as motivation, like showing. You guys remember the Uvalde shooter? I was like, why they gotta show his face? Why they gotta put his name? Like, just tell us the tragedy. So, because people need to have their news, they want to be, aware. They want to be up to date on what's going on. Why do you have to put the name of the guy? I mean, he's already dead. Why do you have to put his name? Why do I have to see his picture? What's the point? Like, I see this as other serial killers who are planning to do something like this. That's going to be their last straw. They're going to click. They're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to have the whole world know pain. I'm going to show the whole world my pain. I feel like nobody understands my pain. Guess I got to find a way to get it out. Guess I got to find a way to express it. Yeah, let me just go shoot a bunch of children. That's what the fuck they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, I'm going to be the most famous person for a day. Everybody's going to know my name. Ha ha ha. Then who's going to be laughing? I will get the final laugh. I will get the final whatever. It's like, stop putting these people's names out there, man. Like, fuck. You guys don't... Yeah, whatever, man. I'm not even gonna... let me know what you guys think, man. I'll see you guys.